In a world when people are increasingly looking to get away from it all, today we're going to break down two of South America's hidden gems, Paraguay versus Uruguay, and talk about residence, citizenship, and tax options in each. It would be easy to say that Uruguay is the Switzerland of South America, the more Tony alternative to other traditionally Latin American countries nearby, and that Paraguay is this kind of rugged country, the most right-leaning country in South America, with this sort of libertarian Wild West demeanor. But today we're going to talk about taxes, we're going to talk about development, we're going to talk about personal freedom, and we're going to talk about how you can plant your flags in each of these countries and how they may fit into your plan B or C or D. And I'm joined by Jovana, who's here, who's Uruguay's #1 fan, to talk about how you can take advantage of these countries. Now let's talk about taxes. Uruguay has one of the more aggressive and one of the more interesting tax incentives for foreigners who move there, where you basically get a 10-year tax exemption plus the year you get there. So basically 11 years where all your foreign assets aren't taxed. And so you can move there, you have some use of tax treaties, but more importantly, you're just basically treating Uruguay for 11 years like a tax-free country. Whereas in Paraguay next door, you have this 10% tax rate that you can run your business, you can earn income. Uruguay 0 for a while, Paraguay 10% from the start.
Yeah, and also in Uruguay, you can actually make a decision whether you want to be taxed for, not to be taxed for 11 years, and afterwards just to be taxed 12% on your foreign interest in dividends. Or you can opt and say, if you're planning for a long term to live in Uruguay, you have a lot of income coming from interest or dividends that you want to bring in Uruguay, you can then opt and say, okay, I want to be taxed 7% on everything till the end of my life.
From the beginning, and give up the 11 years.
And basically waive that 11 years. In return, you get a reduced tax rate.
7% forever, or 12% when the piper comes to be paid. One of the things that kind of, to my stereotype of Uruguay being more Tony, upscale, I would happen to say it's a little bit boring. Maybe that's a good thing in some cases. It is more developed. I think retirees go there. Paraguay seems like a place with more personal freedom, where more young people go. Nobody really thinks of Uruguay as this affordable place. I don't think it's incredibly expensive. I don't think getting a residence permit is really that difficult in terms of the qualifications, but people have this idea that Paraguay is the place that's more affordable, and that's where you go if you're starting out, whereas Uruguay is somewhere if you have a family or if you're retiring.
Yeah, and that is absolutely true when we're comparing prices and in real estate. Still, Uruguay, compared to many other Western places, is relatively affordable. Land, you can purchase beautiful plots of land next to a beach for a relatively small amount of money, and you can freehold that land, so you don't have to set up companies or some complicated structures in order to own it. But I think you're absolutely right. Many, I don't want to call them older, but many retirees are coming in Uruguay to enjoy that kind of more relaxed lifestyle, where Paraguay is really vibing and thriving.
It seems like more of a hustler mentality. And yet, if you don't go to Paraguay, you'll see really not that many pictures. There's never a good stock picture for our website. Like Uruguay has the water, and yet most Uruguayans live on the coast, and something like 98% of Uruguay is the interior. But that's not where people live, of course. Paraguay is a landlocked country, and so that comes with different things. People look at South America as a place to move for personal freedom. A lot of Americans have moved to countries like Mexico. They've been moving to Costa Rica and Panama for many years. You're seeing more people going to Medellin, Colombia, and other places in Colombia, even to Ecuador. And the idea is, I want to get bang for my buck. I want to have more personal freedom. It seems to me that Paraguay really has more of that libertarian vibe. It's really, at this point, the major right-leaning country in South America. Obviously, Argentina's new president is a self-styled anarcho-capitalist. Paraguay, to me, just seems more free, and yet Uruguay doesn't seem unfree.
Right, and many describe Paraguay as a country that currently represents what U.S. policy was in 50s. So those kind of values, I think it's very, from that perspective, very interesting. It's very like, no one wants to bother you. You do your own thing. Taxes are low. Freedom in terms of, it is slightly conservative, obviously, in certain ways, but the freedom of is on a very high level.
In Paraguay. And yet I think that Uruguay was one of the places that talked, about like gay marriage, or was it some of the drug stuff, I think, like more of the social libertarian stuff. They were some of the leaders in that. Whereas Paraguay, it sounds like it's more conservative. And it seems like, again, that hustler mentality, younger people would look at Paraguay more like picks and shovels. There's business opportunities, there's stuff to do. Running a business through a Paraguayan corporation seems really frustrating to me. I think I would just like run my business somewhere else. But Uruguay, again, retirement, you have your business, you have your investments somewhere else. Paraguay, maybe there's some local business. If you're really young, you can go there and do that. If you're just kind of like what I'm doing or what Nomad Capitalist is doing, like I'm just going to run that business overseas and I'm going to go to Paraguay and maybe I pay a little bit of tax for that. But there's this kind of that go get 'em mentality.
Definitely. I mean, you pointed out right regarding Uruguay, but also on the other side, what is interesting looking at the country is that they are really pushing this more libertarian freedom in terms of taxes and bringing foreign investments with very good tax regime, with overall trying to bring more tax-free zones for companies, bring more big companies, and they're giving employees that are coming in the country a lot of exemptions. So there is a balance between those two things in Uruguay as well.
What's interesting that everywhere in Latin America, and I think South America is no different, is affordable residence permits. You can come into Uruguay with an income of about $3,000 a month, I believe, is to qualify for a residence permit. You can come into Paraguay, depending on where you're from, with as little as a 4-figure bank deposit. I think the safer way now maybe is a $70,000 investment, and you basically get your way to permanent residence in Paraguay. Both of these very easy programs to get into, but they have some key differentiators.
Sure. So Uruguay does technically require certain physical presence on the ground. I mean, Paraguay does as well for citizenship in a way. So the catch with Uruguay is that you first get a temporary residence, which is good for 6 months, or at least until you do not get permanent residence. So pretty much in a very short period, you become a permanent resident. But again, the catch is that during that time, from the moment you apply until you get a permanent residence, you need to be in the country. Every time you leave, they pause your process, which obviously for some reasons, for certain family reasons or business reasons, they might give an exemption. But generally, if you're just leaving country unannounced, it can be, they can cause a process. Again, Uruguay citizenship, it does take a bit longer, 3 to 5 years, which what is an interesting thing is that 3 years if you are married or if you come to Uruguay.
With a family.
Yeah, with the family. It doesn't have to be a Uruguayan spouse, which is the rule in many other countries. In Uruguay, if you come to Uruguay with a family or you get married, in the meantime, 3 years till citizenship. And if you're single, then it is 5 years till citizenship. Paraguay, on the other side, has 2 separate routes to temporary or permanent residence. So you can immediately apply for permanent residence with 70K options or 70K investment in a business in Paraguay and get it immediately. Or you can go with self-sufficient visa or demonstrating that you have enough funds to support yourself in Paraguay and get permanent residence after 2 years.
And so what we're seeing is this general trend towards where countries increase the requirements, or what we saw, there was a big scandal in Paraguay many years ago about, citizenship being granted a bit too easily and some weirdness, some irregularities going on. And so they said, all right, let's enforce that physical presence requirement more, what we call paper residences. You can work towards citizenship and eventually claim it without having to necessarily be on the ground. Isn't really working as well in Paraguay. I've said for years, Uruguayans have at times pushed back on me, but I stand by it, that you need to substantially be living in Uruguay if you want to get Uruguayan citizenship. And I think Paraguay has moved in that direction as well. So you've got tax-friendly countries, each with a little bit different vibe. Great quality passports, by the way. Both countries can go to the UK, can go to Ireland, can go to Europe, can go really all over the world, not the US, not Canada, not Australia, but like most of the other places in the world, you've got top quality passports. If you get there, you've got far away from it all residence programs. If you don't get there, over time, it's probably someplace you want to spend a little time, whether it's part of the trifecta, Maybe you go to Paraguay, and that's your 4 months of emerging South America. You get the food, you get the vibe, maybe you get some business ideas. I think there's going to be a lot of business to come in the years ahead in Latin America. Maybe you move there full time, maybe you never leave there and you keep it in your back pocket and eventually it goes away. These are the kinds of questions you want to ask yourself. It's what Nomad Capitalist helps people do. If you have $500,000 or more in income, if you have $1 million or more in liquid net worth, we would be happy to help you figure out what residence permits you need. And it might not just be go to Uruguay. We've had Americans, they just go to Uruguay, that's it, done and dusted. They're going to get the citizenship. They're happy to be there. For other folks, it might be part of a trifecta. It might be part of a plan B, C, or D. I think South America is an important part. So these are two hidden gems that a lot of people overlook. They're further away, and yet, for what's happening in the world right now, that may not be a bad thing.